There's something I've been carrying on my heart lately, and I believe maybe God has put you here today to hear it. It's about the person you're waiting for, the one you've been praying about, and why sometimes God's answer doesn't look anything like what you expected. Because maybe you've been asking God for clarity, for confirmation, for some kind of sign that you're on the right path, and instead of giving you what you asked for, He keeps showing you someone younger. And I don't mean a little younger, I mean younger in a way that makes you question everything you thought you knew about His plan for your life. Now I want you to stay with me here, because this isn't about age itself, this is about trust. This is about whether you believe that God, who knew you before you were even formed in your mother's womb, actually knows what He's doing when He writes your love story. See, we live in a world that has convinced us that certain things just don't make sense, that certain combinations don't work, that there's a proper order to everything, and if you step outside of that order, you're making a mistake. But God has never been limited by our understanding of what makes sense. He's never been confined by the boxes we try to put Him in, or the timelines we try to impose on His will. When Isaiah wrote that God's ways are higher than our ways, and His thoughts higher than our thoughts, he wasn't just writing poetry, he was telling us a fundamental truth about how God operates. God sees the entire picture while we're still trying to figure out what the puzzle is supposed to look like. And when it comes to the person He's chosen for you, He's not looking at the same things you're looking at. You're looking at resumes and checkboxes, and whether this makes sense to your family or your friends, or the people at church who think they know better. God is looking at hearts, at spiritual maturity, at who this person is becoming, not just who they are right now. He's looking at the way your souls fit together, the way your faith will challenge each other, the way your testimonies will intertwine to create something that glorifies Him. And sometimes, beloved, that person is younger than you expected. Maybe significantly younger in years, but not younger in the ways that actually matter to God. Because God isn't counting birthdays when He's arranging divine appointments. He's counting faithfulness. He's measuring devotion. He's weighing character. He's testing hearts. And if He has shown you someone younger, if He keeps bringing this person across your path, if you keep feeling this unexplainable pull towards someone who doesn't fit the narrative you wrote for yourself, maybe it's time to ask yourself a different question. Not, does this make sense, but am I willing to trust God even when it doesn't? I think about Abraham and Sarah, and I know their story is usually told from the angle of Sarah being too old, but flip that script for a moment. God promised Abraham descendants as numerous as the stars, and Abraham could have looked at Sarah and said, "Lord, this doesn't make sense. Maybe you meant someone else, someone younger, someone who can still bear children easily." But God said, "No, it's her, it's Sarah, and I know the end from the beginning, and what looks impossible to you is already finished in my mind." See, when God knows the end from the beginning, He's not guessing. He's not hoping it works out. He's not taking a chance on your relationship. He has already seen your wedding day. He's already seen your children, if that's part of the plan. He's already seen the ministry you'll build together, the lives you'll touch together, the legacy you'll leave together. And if that person is younger, then their youth is not a mistake. It's a deliberate choice by a God who doesn't make errors. Maybe they're younger because they have a different kind of energy that will balance your wisdom. Maybe they're younger because they haven't been hardened by the same disappointments that tried to close your heart. Maybe they're younger because God knew you needed someone who still believes in miracles, who still has that raw, unfiltered faith that hasn't been dulled by religious routine. Or maybe, and this is the one that might sting a little, maybe they're younger because you needed to wait, because you weren't ready earlier, because God had to do some work in you first before He could entrust you with the gift of this person. Because that's what a godly relationship is, beloved. It's not a trophy. It's not a completion of you. It's a stewardship. It's God saying, "I'm going to trust you with one of my children. I'm going to place their heart in your hands, and I need to know that you're ready to honor that." And sometimes, getting us ready takes longer than we wanted it to take. Sometimes God has to strip away our pride, our self-righteousness, our need to control every outcome, our fear of what other people think. He has to teach us how to love unconditionally, how to serve without keeping score, how to sacrifice without resentment, how to lead without dominating, how to submit without losing ourselves. And that process doesn't happen overnight. It happens over years, sometimes over decades. So when you finally meet that person and they're younger than you expected, it's not because God forgot how old you were getting while you were waiting. It's because the wait was part of the preparation. And this person, regardless of their age, is the reward for your faithfulness during the process. Now, I know some of you are sitting there thinking about what people will say, and I need to address that because it's real and it matters to you. You're worried about the whispers, the judgment, the raised eyebrows, the people who are going to question whether this is really God or just your own desire. And I want to tell you something in love. When God gives you an assignment, there will always be people who don't understand it. When Noah started building an ark on dry land, I promise you the neighbors had opinions. When David, a shepherd boy, stepped up to fight Goliath while trained soldiers stood paralyzed, I promise you people questioned his judgment. When Mary, a virgin, said yes to carrying the Son of God, I promise you the whole town had something to say about it. Your obedience to God has never required the approval of people who can't see what God has shown you. And if God has placed this younger person in your life, if He's confirmed it in your spirit, if you've prayed about it and fasted about it and sought counsel about it, and you keep getting the same answer, then beloved, you have to decide who you're going to serve. Are you going to serve the opinions of people who won't be there in your marriage? Or are you going to serve the God who will be the third cord that keeps your relationship from being broken? Because here's what I've learned after years of watching God work in people's lives. The relationships that look strangest to the world are often the ones that make the most sense to heaven. God doesn't call us to blend in. He calls us to stand out, to be peculiar, to be set apart. And sometimes that means our love story won't look like everyone else's. Sometimes it means your husband will be younger and people will assume things about you that aren't true. Sometimes it means your wife will be younger and people will question your motives even though your heart is pure. But if God is in it, then their opinions are just noise, and noise can't stop what God has ordained. I want you to think about Ruth and Boaz for a moment, because we don't talk enough about the fact that Ruth was likely decades younger than Boaz. She was a young widow. He was an established man, a landowner, someone who had already built his life. And when Ruth came to the threshing floor that night and essentially proposed to Boaz, he could have said no. He could have said, "Ruth, this doesn't make sense. You're too young for me. People will talk. There are younger men who would be a better fit." But Boaz saw what God saw. He saw her character, her loyalty, her faith, her decision to leave everything behind to follow Naomi and Naomi's God. He saw a woman of valor, and he didn't let the age difference stop him from stepping into the role God had assigned him. And because he said yes to what God was doing, he became part of the lineage of Jesus Christ. His name is forever written in the greatest story ever told, and his relationship with Ruth is still being talked about thousands of years later as an example of redemptive love. That's what happens when you trust God's plan, even when it doesn't fit the mold. You don't just get a relationship, you get a legacy, you get a testimony, you get a story that will encourage people long after you're gone. But you have to be willing to say yes when God says yes, even if the world is saying no. Now, let me talk to those of you who are the younger person in this equation, because I know you're here too, and you need to hear this. You might be feeling insecure, wondering if you're enough, wondering if you can match the maturity and life experience of this older person God has placed in your path. You might be looking at where they are in life and where you are and thinking, "God, I don't fit here. I'm not ready for this. They need someone who's already established." But beloved, God doesn't need you to be where they are. He needs you to be exactly who you are. Your youth is not a disqualification, it's part of the design. 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 12 says, "Let no one despise your youth, but be an example to the believers in word, in conduct, in love, in spirit, in faith, in purity." Paul was telling Timothy, don't let anyone make you feel less than because of your age. Instead, let your life speak so loudly that your age becomes irrelevant. That's your assignment. Not to try to be older than you are, not to pretend you have experiences you don't have, but to bring the fullness of who God made you to be into this relationship. Bring your energy, bring your fresh perspective, bring your unbridled passion for God. Bring your willingness to dream big and believe for the impossible. Because maybe the person you're with has been through so much that they've forgotten how to dream, and God sent you to remind them. Maybe they've become so practical and cautious that they've lost their sense of wonder, and God sent you to reignite it. Maybe they need someone who will push them out of their comfort zone, who will challenge them to try new things, who will remind them that God is still doing new things and He's not done with them yet. Your age is not an accident, it's an assignment, and God knew exactly what He was doing when He brought you two together. I also want to address the spiritual element of this, because when we talk about God knowing the end from the beginning, we're talking about His sovereignty, His omnipotence, His perfect